wheresoever we went. Dang it, I should have paused it, you
It
man.
was
I'd had to do this twice just to pause this. Like I did it once, mess it up, took the opportunity to start the recording, and then mess it up again. Uh, and wheresoever we went, like Juno's swan, still we went coupled and inseparable. William Shakespeare, as you like it. I've never read that book, so I don't actually know the reference. Yeah, I don't.
it was dark when two mysterious shrouded figures appeared in the hillside village. The strangers knocked on every door in town, asking for food and shelter,
Food and
but
shelter.
again and again they were turned away.
Why were they turned away?
Soon there was just one door left, that of a small, thatched shack.
Back shack.
An elderly couple, Baucis and Philemon, answered the thunderous knock. Although there was something off about these visitors, it was in the pair's nature to care for those in need. Philemon
Good-hearted.
invited
You gotta
them to
love it.
rest, and the cottage flooded with warmth as Baucis teased the fire back to life. When they were young, Baucis
Yeah,
and
tease,
Philemon had
tease.
fallen in love, married and settled in the humble cottage.
That's cute.
Decades later, their home was still standing, and they were more devoted to each other than ever.
It's kind of gnarly hearing like old timey stories of like mythological times, and like the fact that their cottage is still standing is like a big fucking deal. That's kind of wild.
The strangers watched intently as Baucis
Me, I'm
nestled
the stranger.
twigs under a battered pot filled with vegetables.
Looks
The
delicious.
couple could rarely afford meat, but in honor of their guests, Philemon cut strips from an aging shank for the stew.
Fire.
They made cheerful conversation and offered their visitors hot baths. Baucis used a chip of broken clay to balance the wobbly table's legs and rubbed its surface with mint until it smelled sweet and fresh.
Fire. Fire. They're
Weaving
cleaning with
around
like
each other with care,
plants and
the
shit.
couple
They don't actually have
transformed what they
cleaners. They
had
just make shit
into a
smell good
feast.
instead of actually cleaning
Soon the
shit.
tabletop overflowed with food and the last of their sweet wine. Privately, Baucis and Philemon worried that their provisions would run out. Yet as the night wore on and their strange guests took hearty gulps of wine, the clay vessel never ran dry.
That's
The
crazy.
couple, at first relieved, grew terrified. Their guests weren't humble peasants traveling the countryside. They were almost certainly gods in disguise.
That's facts. That's
But
gotta be
which
gods. Gotta
they
be
didn't
gods,
know.
bro. Just wandering around.
Panicked that their preparations were inadequate, Baucis and Philemon searched for another offering. The only precious thing left was the goose that guarded their home. The couple repeatedly lunged after the bird, but they were too worn out for the chase. So they prepared to receive the wrath of the gods. Their guest rose up, shedding their rags and mortal masks. Looming before them was Zeus, the storm-brewing ruler of the gods,
That's crazy,
and his
dog.
son,
He was just
Hermes, the fleet-footed
John Barton.
messenger who shepherded mortals to the underworld. The gods told the old
Zeus and
couple
Hermes just pulled
that,
up. Like,
unlike the other
hey,
townspeople,
what's up, dog? You
they
got any
had
food, dog? We
shown
got some
true
unlimited wine. You
xenia,
trying to
or
party?
loving hospitality to strangers. They alone had passed the test.
It's fat.
The
Fire.
gods commanded the
Fire.
couple to follow them, and the group ascended the nearest mountain. Nearing the summit, Baucis and Philemon looked back, but were shocked to see a murky swamp where their village stood just moments before. As punishment for refusing to shelter the gods, Zeus and Hermes had cast the townspeople underwater, leaving only their host's home intact.
Fire,
Recalling
dog.
their friends and neighbors, Baucis and Philemon couldn't hide their terror and
They were
mourned
still
for
sad
years,
for their friends because they're
even
the
as their
nicest people
house
ever, dog.
transformed below.
But they deserve to be the leaders
It grew
because they're the
larger
nicest
and
people ever.
sprouted marble pillars and steps. Legends etched themselves onto its grand doors. Their rickety cottage had metamorphosed into a gleaming temple for the gods.
That's wild.
Hermes
It's a cool
commended the
story.
couple and gently asked if there was anything they desired. After a brief discussion, Philemon requested that he and Baucis be permitted to care for the new temple, and he asked if, when their time came, they could die together, so neither would have to face life without the other.
That's sweet.
Tending to the temple and one another, they lived many more years. Until one day, Baucis noticed leaves fluttering from her husband's hands and looked down to find her own skin hardening. They embraced, becoming rooted in place. Vines wound around their
That's
lips,
crazy, bro.
and canopies flourished overhead. They bid each other a loving last farewell as humans. And where Baucis and Philemon had just stood, bent with age, there towered a linden and an oak tree, their branches intertwined for eternity.
See, mythology is like it's like straight up psychology. Like I swear, I said that before on an earlier video that I made. And psychology is just like straight up. I mean, mythology is like straight up psychology. And it's kind of weird because we didn't really start studying psychology until like, I don't know, like the 1900s. But 2,000 years ago, people were coming up with myths like these before Christianity even existed that were like very tapped into human psychology. And it's really kind of eerie to kind of think about that idea. You know, like we went in a 2,000 year circle because we did the whole Christianity thing.